Hi, welcome or welcome back. Welcome back. My name is Sharifa, and I'm with the Nubian Review. And today I am coming to bring you part two of my Black History recommendations. I started out with the original video, which I will post in the card, and I lost footage. And so between that time and now, I've been scrambling, trying to edit, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys, editing is something new to me, but I'm going to get better. So because I couldn't piece the video together, I'm going to go ahead and just give you part two of the rest of the list. So that's what we're going to do today, okay? So listed, I have the books, and I don't think they're in the order in which I spoke about in the earlier video, in which I was cut off. But I will give you the book that I ended off with, and so then we can go from there. When part one of this 25 recommendation ended for Black History Month, I was ending with the book Nice Racism: How Progressive White People Perpetuate Racial Harm. And so I was giving you this as a recommendation. And this is a very good book to read. If anyone wants to understand, and I promised myself I wouldn't say, if you really want to understand the likely relationship between progressivism and the harm it does to Black and brown communities and the role we all play. Racism is a very quick read. I promised myself, after looking at some of my videos, I'm going to try to work on not saying the word and very nice. And it was another word I was using. Beautiful, very beautiful. Because my vocabulary is much more expansive than that. But sometimes when you're recording, I just did it again. When you're recording, and I don't edit. So when you're recording, I don't know, it takes, the nervousness. Because if this was just like a regular conversation, I wouldn't likely use those three words in that pattern all the time. So let's get to the next book and let me stop rambling. So the next book I do have, which was on my 25 or 25 Black History recommendations, is Black AF History: The Unwhitewashed Story of America, Michael Harriot. And I love this book. I highly recommend this to everyone. Um, if you are a child, if you were a child of the 70s, the 80s, I want to say the 60s too. I would say 60s, 70s, and 80s. This author writes about history and the memory of how he learned to connect the dots of history so well. He weaved the story of different social events, and then he would dip out until into like patching different aspects of United States history together. And it was just, it's beautifully written. It's a beautifully written story. Once again, I said that word, but it's a he did an excellent job at weaving the details of Black history together to tell the story, a soulful story of United States and the history of the United States, told in the voices of African Americans. Beautiful book. I think that I will always recommend this book. Not only did I read it, I listened to it on the audio, and I love it both. Like, even while I was reading it, there are so many quotes in here. This is highly, highly quotable. There's one that let me read this one to you, and then I'll go to The next recommendation, The Real Power of the Buddha. No, that wasn't it. This is from another book. Start from this book. Let's see. I think it's from this book. There was a quote in here that I really, really liked. Oh, these are quotes from this book. I'm not going to read it right now. I have cards in here of the quotes that I most remembered. Apparently, I have them in here for a reason. But there was one particular quote that the author, he wrote about when he was talking about his memories of Earth, Wind, and Fire, and in that time period. And it just, I resonated with a lot of the things that he connected in learning about United States history. So this is a good book. I always will recommend this book regardless. The next book that I want to share with you is The Spirit of a Man, a vision of transformation for Black men and the women who love them. I recommend this book because this is a love letter to Black people in relationships, on how healing works when we understand each other. It's a very short book, but it's a very powerful book. I found this book at a thrift store. I loved it so much after I got finished reading it. I found another one at a thrift store, at a different thrift store, and I ended up giving it to my sister. And so, actually, I gave her my copy, and then I found another one, which is this one, and I just kept it, and I never went back and got the other one from her because, when I find a book that I really want a person to read, I will let you have the book, and I'll just go ahead and get another one, unless it's a first edition. But yeah, so this is a really good story. Being a mother of two African American males, I would say sometimes love looked different culturally, and I am one of those people who like to understand, what's going on, or how does the lens of this world look differently for you, right? Because the lens of a world look different for me as a woman, as a Black woman. And so, because I am in that space, I am in that mind frame, sometimes it helps to understand, what somebody else like to, read and try to observe so you can be sympathetic and empathetic toward those other people's needs. But this right here is a great start. I recommend this to a lot of people, particularly, if you're dating a Black man or if you have Black male children, to read this, and it would definitely help you connect in a spiritual sense of of their outlook of the world and how you can connect with them. This book, The Washing of the Spears, The Rise and Fall of the Zulu Nation, this is a very insightful book. It talks about the Zulu Nation in their war against the British, the British Army, and the rise and fall of the Zulu Nation. This really gives a good look of how the British colonized very countries in Africa, along with other, European countries. I will say this: if you ever, this is a good book. I always recommend the book before the movie, but I always recommend the movie because some people are just more drawn to watching a movie before they will the book. So anytime I get a recommendation, I always try to get a recommendation. If there's a movie, I will mention it. If there's something similarly close that will allow you to understand I will always recommend it, even if it's an audiobook. This doesn't have an audiobook. However, the Washington Spears, the Washington of the Spears is a widely recognized book, and it's highly read across different academic different academic um, settings. And so the author Donald R. Morris, who's no longer with us, talks about, you know, how the inception of the agreement with the Zulu Nation and the British, and how it got into a war state. The movie Shaka Zulu, and that's what I was alluding to, tells some of the story, but it doesn't tell all of it. The movie Shaka Zulu, I think, is on YouTube. If you're ever interested in watching it, it tells you bits and pieces, but it's basically, it's not an adaptation of this, but it's close to what you would read in this book. But the book, it tells so much a vivid story of how the British colonized um, that part of Africa. And so, yeah, I always, when I originally read this book, I got it from the library. I liked it so much. I went and got it for my own collection. I couldn't tell you where I got it from. I know I probably bought it off at a discount website, but I couldn't tell you. But it's a good read, and I do recommend that one as well. We the People. 4 presidents that changed the landscape of America. And that's how I'm going to sum up this book. 3 of them were very progressive. 1 of them was very transgressive. That's all I'm going to say. But this tells the story of the 3 presidents, of the 4 presidents. I'm always going to say 3, but of the 4 presidents who policies moved America and Americans forwardly, right, in progressiveness. And I would say, honestly, with Reagan, his as a liberal-minded person, I would not say, and I cannot agree, that Reagan policies moved us forward. It actually stagnated black and brown communities. I'm just going to be honest with you. But this is a good read. This will give you the insight of their policies and how they move the needle in the United States. Mount Rushmore. I had referred to this book in another one of my videos, and I could not remember this mountain. So they did like a remaking of Mount Rushmore, and I thought that was a very interesting design. The author, Juan Williams, he has another book that was just published. It's on my list of books to get, and when I get it, I will just introduce it to the channel. But Juan Williams, he writes some of the best books in various aspects of United States history and United States government. And so, yeah, if you were to just look up some of his books, they're very quick reads, but they're very sound reads. I love his writing, and I do recommend his books. We the People, Juan Williams. We're getting down to the last 2 books, you guys. So this first book I'm going to introduce to you is a book that I think I've mentioned a few times on this channel, and it is Bearing the Cross. This book I decided to recommend because of what's going on right now in United States politics. So as you know, Bearing the Cross, David J. Garrow, he tells a personal account of a civil rights movement and the Montgomery bus boycott. And so it weaves the story from the death of Emmett Till to the Montgomery boycott. So all of that is in the background in the scene, not so much highlighting Emmett Till, but it kind of moved the story forward. And so it introduces a young Martin Luther King, and how he took up leadership to lead the boycott. So I think it is an interesting story that weaves the tale of all the players, not just him, but it weaves in, who played what, introduction to a lot of key people. I'm not going to tell you who because I really do want you to read the book. This is also in paperback and audio book if you're an audio listener, but it does tell a good story on, the power of one voice. And with everything that's going on with DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, we've had that's been the issue in the United States since day one, right? Giving everybody an opportunity to have a good life. And so it's just hard for me to believe that, like, at this state in my life, that we are still dealing with the same things um, since the 60s. But this right here tells a beautiful, beautiful story. Here I go with those words again, you all. But yeah, it tells the story of the book Montgomery Bus Boycott. This book has been read and passed on in universities, in history studies on the civil rights. I've read this book a few times myself. I still pull from this book when I want to find a quote or summarize part of the Montgomery boycott. This is a good read. I hope that at some point you find your way to this book within the next 4 years from this video to understand the power of people unifying together to get what they want. Last but not least is a book that I've shown on this channel quite a few times. And if you know me, you should probably know what book I'm going to share with you. But if you don't, that's okay. You can start getting used to it. This book I recommend because I feel like if anybody wants to understand the civil rights in its totality, I think Taylor Branch, him amongst other people, but I always, reference this book. He told the story the best for me of this time. It talks about the unknown Martin Luther King and his rise to prominence, other key players, John Lewis, Jesse Jackson. It's just Abernathy, a slew of key players, civil rights key players who were unknown then, who rose to prominence, who we are indebted to in terms of equal opportunities, civil rights, voting rights, right? And so these are the people who played monumental, they were monumental in the fight for equality for black and brown men and women, not rich, but poor people. And so I always like to reference this book. I think that I will always, when I'm thinking of books to reference, I will always point to this one because it leads you to understand the wider cause of humanitarian. And when one group of people when everyone is treated fairly, I'm not going to say one group of people, when everyone is treated fairly and have those opportunities, life is just good for everyone. So I will always refer Pardon Waters, America in the King Years, 1954 to 63. This is the first of a 3-volume series. I always will recommend this one first because this right here catapults us into the Voting Rights Act. And so, in saying that, I want to say thank you for stopping by to watch this video. This is a part 2 of my 25 Black History recommendations of 2025. Once again, I do apologize for being late for this half of the video. I was not anticipating on having this shown at the end of the month by the time I'm recording this video. But I did want to get it out there because this was part of my list. And so what I plan on doing at some point, and I can't promise you today or, sometime before the spring of 2025, I will have like a list on my Substack. And if you want to follow me on Substack, I will leave a link below before that. But I will have a list on my Substack of the books I mentioned, the 25 of 2025 Black History recommendations. And if you have any questions or any comments, please leave them in the comment section below. And thank you for coming back, and I hope to see you soon. Please like, subscribe, and share. Yeah, I think like, subscribe, and share. Yeah, let's get these algorithms up so everybody can get the good news. Until then, you have a beautiful day wherever you are in the world. Bye-bye.